huge games in Munster this weekend. Of course, Dublin against Carlow as well. They haven't released their teams as we're recording here. But just to start off with Waterford against Limerick, John Kiely has thrown the cat among the pigeons here because he's dropped Diarmaid Byrnes, who scored 20 points during the league, 3 from play, and he's dropped Darragh O'Donovan, who I felt should have been an all-star last year. And these are two guys that he would have depended on. They seem low maintenance. A team like Kilkenny, like Brian Cody, because he's such an institution over the years, if he drops any name whatsoever, you're kind of thinking he's got the strength of personality and the respect around the county that no one would ever question what he did, and the players would just think, I'm going to work twice as hard to get back in. Now, John Kiely obviously has a lot of respect there, but is he the same level of name that he can endure dropping players and then all of a sudden that doesn't have a destabilising effect? I think these guys have played well enough over the past couple of years as well to maybe get a chance to redeem themselves as well. So I thought that was a huge call. Paddy O'Loughlin is going in wing back for his championship debut. Now I saw him playing against Dublin in the league semi-final at Nolan Park. Played pretty well, did well for UCC as well. Now he was a sweeper. One thing in possession, is he tidy enough? Well, maybe he hasn't just played at this level enough at the moment. He is a good player, but it remains to be seen. William O'Donoghue is gone into midfield alongside Cian Lynch, and just from playing against Napiershik in the Club All-Irelands last year, William O'Donoghue is a real powerhouse, very, very strong figure, and when he carries the ball, he was faster than I thought as well. Really, really good ball carrier, but definitely probably in there for his combative nature more than anything else, I'd imagine. So if you look at the two players, Paddy O'Loughlin and William O'Donoghue, it's a big team getting even bigger again. So just looking at the next things that spring to mind, actually it reminds you a bit like Cork last week, because Cork had been beaten well by Tipperary. Then all of a sudden they just decided, well, let's bring in some people out of the cold. Mark Ellis had watched the game from the stand the week beforehand. He had played an intermediate club match then that same day. He gets brought into centre back, and all of a sudden that, along with a couple of other changes, and Cork are motoring all of a sudden. So maybe that's the flip side for Limerick, that they are actually going to turn it around. Paul Brown is back in the squad as well after doing his cruciate last year and missing the All-Ireland run. So again, that's another midfield option. If like Darragh O'Donovan and Diarmaid Byrnes are both named in the squad in the 26, so you'd imagine it's nothing to do with injury. But Paul Brown's back in there as well. Pat Ryan too, of course, who came on and scored the goal in the All-Ireland semi-final last year. So there are lots of options for John Kiely. Let's look at the Waterford team. Dara Fives, Maurice Shanahan and Mikey Carney actually are back in the team. Conor Gleeson, Patrick Kern and Shane Bennett have all lost out as well. So if I was Waterford, what does that mean? It probably means that they're going to be playing with a sweeper. Mikey Carney, I'd imagine, would come from the full forward line out to the half forward line. You'd be looking at probably maybe even the likes of Austin Gleeson dropping further down the field as well. Maurice Shanahan is named wing forward, but then again, will he be full forward? Hard to know. But he will get the crowd going, because they probably never got the crowd going against Waterford last week, and that's something that people said time and time again. Stephen Bennett, the target man, you've got pace either side. Tommy Ryan is there as well. We know what pace he has, and what difficulty will that cause Limerick? Is he going to be... Who would Porrick Fanning like him on? Would he like him on Richie English? Use a bit of pace on him. Sean Finn has got plenty of pace. I'd imagine Richie English has plenty too. And then of course you have Mike Casey fullback, who's no slouch either. Jack Prendergast is in midfield. Started midfield against Tipperary, in the midfield area against Tipperary. Made a couple of lovely runs up the middle at the start. Dan McCormick was then sent to his area, seemed to quieten him a little bit, taken off, but he starts midfield here again as well. So one big change is Dara Fives coming back in. With Philip Mahoney injured, they needed someone to plug the gap, and they didn't just get any old player. Dara Fives is the guy who in 2017, when Tadhg de Burka was suspended for the All-Ireland semi-final against Cork, he was thrown in as the sweeper, number 6 I suppose ostensibly, and had a fantastic game as well. So very hard to know how this game is going to pan out. I suppose, well, realistically you're expecting Limerick to win here, but Waterford is surely going to come up with one big performance. Never got going fully against Clare, and I think a 1 point defeat probably flattered them somewhat. 18 points was probably a bit harsh against Tipperary. The red card, based on the video evidence we saw, to Conor Gleeson on the 2 yellows, small bit harsh the first one. So they'll be at least looking for a performance, but I believe the vibe isn't great down there, so we'll see how that goes. Clare against Tipperary then. Cusack Park, going to be an absolute cracker, you'd imagine. But quite different from last year when Tipperary got dumped out of the championship, and we remember that photograph of Noel McGrath down on his knees with his hands in his face in tears. The big one for Tipperary is Niall O'Meara coming back in for Dan McCormick. Dan played against Watford last week, was good enough game, stopped those Jack Prendergast runs, got on a few balls. But he came off during the second half. He's been replaced from the start by Niall O'Meara, who got injured late on in the Cork game. So apparently at the time it looked like a hamstring injury. Then there was talk that it was cramp. Then he didn't feature at all against Watford. There was no need to risk him when Tipp were so far ahead. But he was probably Tipp's best player against Cork, certainly while he was on the field. Now, the likes of Bubbles shot the lights out, and a couple of other guys, Jason Ford as well, got man of the match. But while he was on the field, I felt Niall O'Meara, or Bill O'Meara as they call him, was the form guy. So it'll be very interesting to see how he goes as well. Alan Flynn keeps his place in the defence. He didn't start the first game against Cork, Sean O'Brien did. But Alan Flynn came in to mark the pacey Tommy Ryan, who I've mentioned already, against Watford. Did pretty well, even though Tommy Ryan, I think, got 3 points maybe. Very, very dangerous forward. And Tommy Ryan looks like someone who just came on the scene, but he's 28, 29, 30, something like that. Against Clare in the league, Alan Flynn played as a man marker on Tony Kiely. So you'd be wondering, will that happen again? Maybe not though, because you look at that Clare full forward line, Shane O'Donnell, John Conlon and Podge Collins as well. There's some pacey guys to take care of back there, and obviously there's a bit of power with John Conlon too. Shane O'Donnell has given Tipp plenty of trouble in the past, and the 2017 All-Ireland quarter-final against Cork, that definitely springs to mind. He gave James Barry a tough time that day. Will Tipperary end up with a 5-man defence? Because there's some talk that Clare will end up playing a sweeper, which would be 7 back. They have Jack Brown at centre back, and you'd imagine Colm Galvin is going to sit in front of him as well. Last year in the All-Ireland semi-final, Clare were getting annihilated by Galway in the first 20 odd minutes, and then Colm Galvin went in as a spare man, stood right on the D, and all of a sudden that just changed their game altogether, because Galway were just hitting boom ball all day, and he was able to just pick up break after break. Now, if this was Tipperary of last year, you'd think there'd probably be nothing but boom ball heading his way again, but Tipp seemed to be more interested in taking care of the ball and hitting grass in front of their players as well. So for Tipperary, that might make it more difficult for Colm Galvin. Definitely not a massive amount of pace in that Tipp backline. James Barry isn't absolutely lightning. The three Mahers, in fact, like Brendan Maher is actually faster than people would possibly give him credit for. Paddy Maher is meant to be pretty quick in a straight line too, and Ronan Maher probably not the quickest either. So Cathal Bart does have pace, Alan Flynn definitely has pace, but it's something that you'd imagine this Clare attack will be going for, as I said, with Shane O'Donnell and Podge Collins in particular as well. Diarmuid Ryan gets his championship debut, so I'm sure he'll be working between the 265s and hope to get a score as well. Actually, be interesting to see who picks up who. Will Cathal Bard pick up Shane O'Donnell and follow him everywhere, or will he pick up Podge Collins, who you'd imagine would roam further away from goal? Also, John Conlon, is he going to be taken up by Ronan Maher or by James Barry? I'd imagine James Barry, because he's just been the full back line for so many years. For him to be moved out from the full back line to another position at this stage, probably unlikely. So Cathal Bard maybe on Shane O'Donnell, follow him everywhere he goes. Podge Collins being marked by Alan Flynn, but it could be the other way around. Then Mark Keogh and Jake Morris are back in the 26 for Tipperary, it was interesting. They were dropped last week. There was talk of an injury maybe for Keogh, but they're back in. They would probably be the next in line for Tipperary to sort of step up into the team, so probably important for them to get back in there. I see that Bubbles has been named at number 11. Tipp have been naming guys in different positions every week, so that's probably good, because again, over the years you could say exactly where the Tipp players are going to play, and for once now you can't say exactly. Well, we know Callan's going to be full forward, we know Bubbles is going to be wherever. So Bubbles named at 11. I always thought that if he was got sharp enough, fit enough, that he could possibly play a Richie Hogan type centre forward role. Not sure if he has all of the same attributes as Richie Hogan, but certainly the risks will be similar enough between the two of them. Niall O'Meara is named corner forward. I couldn't see that happen. I think he'd be wing forward. So I'd imagine it's going to be Bubbles, John McGrath and Ford on the inside line, but there should be rotation. You kind of need that anyway. The Carlow and Dublin teams haven't been named just yet, so can't say a whole lot about those teams. Antrim haven't named their team for the game against Offaly, a huge one in the Joe McDonagh Cup. Offaly really need this. Joe McKelly's after taking over the team. He's made 6 changes. Now he talked about how the team had just thrown in the towel in the previous weeks when Kevin Martin was in charge. So just to name those changes: Peter Garrity, Kiely, Kiely, Shane Kinsella, Aidan Tracy, Paddy Murphy and Kevin Connolly are all drafted in. So that's the teams. So I'll just call out the teams. So the Waterford team then in full: Stephen O'Keefe, Callum Lyons, Conor Prunty, Noel Connors, Dara Fives, Tyke de Burka, Kevin Moran, Jamie Byrne and Jack Prendergast midfield, Porrick Mahoney, Austin Gleeson and Maurice Shanahan, with a full forward line of Mikey Carney, Stephen Bennett and Thomas Ryan. Right, then moving on to the Limerick team, of course, which I haven't written down, and I'll find just here now. You know the fullback, it's going to be Nicky Quaid, Sean Finn, Mike Casey, Richie English. It's going to be Paddy O'Loughlin, Declan Hannon, and Dan Morrissey, Declan Hannon, Cian Lynch, William O'Donoghue, Gerard Hegarty, Kyle Hayes, Tom Morrissey, Aaron Gallan, Mulcahy and Peter Casey are going to be the full forward line. Then for Clare, Donald Toohey, Patrick O'Connor, David McInerney, Shane O'Morey, Cathal Malone, Jack Brown, David Fitzgerald, Shane Golden and Colm Galvin, Peter Duggan, Tony Kelly, Tiermid Ryan, Shane O'Donnell, John Conlon and Podge Collins. And then the Tipp team: Brian Hogan, Cathal Barrett, James Barry, Ronan Maher. Half-back line of Brendan Maher, Porrick Maher, Alan Flynn, Noel McGrath and Michael Breen, Jason Ford, John O'Dwyer and Patrick Maher, and John McGrath, Seamus Calman and Niall O'Mara. And just that Offaly team then, it's Owen Cahill, Ben Keneally, Dermot Short, Pat Kamen, Killian Kiley, Shane Kinsella, Mark Egan, Aidan Tracy, Paddy Murphy, Colin Egan, Joe Bergen, Peter Garrity, Shane Dooley, Oisin Kelly and Kevin Connolly. So that's the teams for this weekend, and that's our game.